Hello you guys, and welcome to Mr. and Mrs. Social Studies. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jake.
And today we're going to try something new. We are going to be doing a reaction video.
Yeah, reaction.
So basically, this is our first time doing one of these, but I'm a big fan of the YouTube channel for Prince EA. He does a lot of really awesome spoken word poems and videos, and there's many that are very, very well done that I love. He did recently release a school-related one, which I think has a lot of great parts, but I know that after we watched it together the first time, we felt a little uneasy about certain parts, and
salty. A little salty. I mean, no, granted, I love Prince EA too, but I get where he's coming from, but then there's some parts that just a little...
We just wanted to address, kind of from the teacher perspective. Both of us are teachers teaching middle school, and this is for both of us our 5th year of teaching. And we've been in, between the two of us, 4 different schools, because we both have worked at 2 different schools. I feel like our perspective's a little different than some of the stuff that was shared in the video, so we kind of wanted to address that while also highlighting some of the points that he makes that we think are really good as well.
Yeah, we're not trying to hate on anybody, whether Prince EA or anybody who agrees with him, but just to offer the other side and to start a little bit of like a conversation. It's just to hear each other out, I think, is what we're trying to do more than anything. Not trying to hate anybody, not trying to spew like vile stuff. And
yep, that's kind of our approach. And with this in mind, I think a key disclaimer is that all schools are different. Just within our 2 schools that we've each worked at, we've seen a huge difference compared to schools that we helped out in or student taught, and we see a huge difference. And we know there are massive differences depending on where you are. So obviously this kind of stuff, a lot of it's not representative. A lot of the big changes that maybe need to be made take place at a much larger level than like an individual school. But nonetheless, we wanted to offer our opinions on these. We will have the video playing on the screen from the original video. It's also linked below, as well as we do not claim we own any part of that video, just for copyright purposes. Let's get started. And we're gonna slide over here a little bit so we can put the video in the screen.
Okay.
You can tell we're new at this. So are you staring at the screen?
Do we look at each other or the video?
We look at the video.
Oh, yeah.
Is school for? Feel free to call me slow, but I spent 16 years going to school, and I still don't know. When I finished, I didn't know how to do my own taxes, purchase a home, or apply for a loan. I didn't know a thing about investments, building credit, or getting a job. I graduated at the top of my class, and what did I have? This fancy diploma to sit at home with my mom.
So I think he made some good points in that first part about these different financial related skills that maybe aren't taught as much, but I think that there are many schools who are doing a great job with some of these. And even in my own school, I'm an 8th grade social studies teacher predominantly, and I actually do teach my kids about investing during the year. I actually do teach my kids about budgeting. I technically do incorporate financial literacy standards that we have for Illinois, and I also teach an elective class about colleges and careers. So we have the kids do kind of an extensive process to think about their job. So I'm sorry that he wasn't able to get that, but at least at my middle school, the kids are getting that at the 8th grade level. So hopefully that also is continuing at the high school level. I think it's just maybe a case-by-case basis.
I mean, taking my school, for example, we definitely, obviously followed the same history standards, social science standards for Illinois, just like you guys do. I could see his point, say, my level, I teach ancient civilizations. Who cares, might be the opinion of, and sometimes I've thought this too, who cares about some of this stuff? You're not exactly teaching, modern day skills per se in that. But I think, and get into this a little bit later, there's still a lot to be gained from learning about, I personally think this, where we came from and how we started as, a species and our own, story as just humanity and the great contributions that different cultures have given us and why we have this and why we have that. But there are classes that, deal with finances in high school per se, but none of it is really required.
Or as practical.
Yeah.
That's the thing, I think me covering some of this stuff in 8th grade is helpful, but I'm sure that students could use more. Even talking about buying a home, we're getting ready to be new home buyers this year probably sometime, and I had to look up a lot of it myself. I've got the tools to figure it out, but
in this case, this particular point, I'd say there is definitely something to be done. I would agree with him in that there definitely could be a lot more.
But luckily, they did teach me some important skills like Factor in trinomials and how mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I'm so happy I remember the Pythagorean theorem, because it helped me a lot. Okay, I'm lying. Let me stop. Because all the stuff they taught me, truthfully, I forgot.
We talk about this sometimes too, even thinking of like from the social studies perspective. I think we are similar in age to Prince EA, I think. I don't know exactly, but we're not too far off his age.
Probably a little bit younger.
Yeah, a little bit younger. But I think that generation, that time of teaching, it was a lot of memorizing and worksheets and that sort of thing. And while there's still some of that now, I think the landscape has shifted a lot. Like, I remember back when I was in middle school, one of my social studies teachers, I didn't really like her that much, but she was like this incredible award-winning teacher. And it's funny because I had saved a lot of my papers from her, and when I went back to look at it, it was all worksheets from the book the whole time. And she was this award-winning teacher, supposedly, you know, and for our approach, like, I mean, we create a lot of our own stuff, and I'm always trying to like do different engaging things and figure out, okay, how can I make this more applicable to real life? How can I incorporate more choices and stuff in this? Forgetting these things is real. Like, I mean, it's happened to us, and even when we've been discussing like some of the minute details about certain historical concepts, I'm like, well, let's be real. We're both social studies teachers, and if we don't remember certain things that we learned at the time, you know, how much depth do we really need to be going into?
I think to say that everything that you learn in school, the blanket statement that he's forgotten, I think that's a little too harsh. And he even himself goes into that a little bit later in the video. He doesn't maybe say it as clear as that, but I think that there definitely is a purpose for school, and there are skills that are not just content related, but relate to a wide variety of areas in life. Like how to write an email, right? This lady here does a great job at teaching that. That's a skill that you
Well, that was my past school. But yeah, like teaching kids how to write a professional email. You know, the skills over content is always going to be a priority, I think.
And that's the shift that we've seen from when we were in school to becoming teachers. That's what people want emphasized. It's not about learning all the facts and the details and the dates, which I completely agree with. It's about the why and how to think about the why and how to make your own conclusions
and connections
about events. Yeah.
Remember when you would ask me, what did you learn in school today? And I would say, nothing much. I wasn't being modest. The truth about it, Mom, is I had already forgotten. And it's not just me. Millions of students sing the same song. How many of you guys avoid eye contact with the teacher to try not to get caught upon? Afraid to raise your hand for fear of being wrong, which proves that school isn't an environment for learning or building up the intellect?
I think both of us in the past were kind of like those kids who didn't really want to be called on. I know that was something I dreaded. I never raised my hand, despite like always achieving really well in school. I never wanted to. But fast forward, I've even gotten criticized. Why don't I call on kids who don't raise their hand? But it's just something I don't do, just because I know myself. I was uncomfortable sometimes in certain classes where I thought I might get called on when I didn't know an answer. But I want my class to be a really safe space, and so I don't. The only time I would call a student out would be if they're being very disrespectful or like blatantly trying to do something else.
And even then, we're respectful about bringing them back into the conversation. It's not like I don't like the perception of teachers like being there just to trash people and to make people feel bad. Because I know I was the shyest kid in school, and I know I consider the same thing that you mentioned with calling people. And if I do call people, I'm very encouraging. I tell them, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You're wrong. Nobody cares. I'm wrong all the time. I'm a human, like literally. I made like 10 mistakes in this class already. It's okay, and I'm the teacher. So I think just more, I mean, I would agree maybe with him in this sense that there are some teachers that maybe project. I think it's getting better now because just the way that we're going in education, it's not teacher-centered anymore, where it's all about the teacher being like the sole source of information and regurgitating, like, not regurgitating facts, but telling you all the facts. I mean, in some cases there is still a little bit of that, because like you need the teacher to be able to explain the information that's available. A kid can see it and it's not going to make sense if they just see it on their own. You still need that teacher for that, but I think it's more so facilitating conversations, and I think it's more so including the students in that thinking process. And yeah, it's okay to be wrong. Like I tell them, like I can't know everything about history. Like it's impossible. If I did, Well, then they probably using my mind like in the government or something for like, some kind of like secret
The
operation.
turns that this is taking.
But I do understand at the same time where he's coming from, that fear, like even in college, like speaking up. And
college was honestly
I think that
worse.
was almost the worst.
Woo!
Being in those classes, because it's like, you're expected to have, some sort of abilities that got you there in the first place.
Yeah.
But
Well, I had a couple, mostly one history class that was kind of insane. We had like over 240 readings during the semester, which is insane. I should have probably dropped it and switched to a different one. I was putting in more hours than any other class before, and like I didn't want to get called on at all. So I'd be like, Ryan knows, and he'd be like, Sarah, what do you think? I was like, well, I think there was one or two times where I was like, to be honest, I just don't really know. But usually I'd try to spin it something. So I know how that feels, and so yeah, just not wanting to do that.
It's just a game. You play for grades and how many A's you can collect.
Okay. I hate to jump back in so soon. This is funny too, because in some ways even the emphasis on grades has changed a little bit. Again, we're at the middle school level. I'm sure it's different when you're a high school teacher.
For sure.
But I even just last week had a conversation with my kids about, yes, grades matter, but it's not the only thing that matters. Skills matter, building relationships matters, trying new things matters, self-awareness matters. I don't want them to get to a point where they were obsessed about grades that they realized they missed out on other things. So it's like, we just had a conversation on this last week.
And I think that part of changing this culture too, this isn't something that you can just attribute to the school. Parents. I mean, that's literally the 95% of the conversations that I have with parents, whether it's, through phone, email, whatever, parent-teacher conference, is all about grades.
It's not about learning.
Not
it's
about learning.
Grades.
It's not about how they feel in class.
So let's turn this back to some parents.
Yeah, let's blame somebody else.
Yeah, parent, no.
No, but I mean, that's part of it too. And it's like, I told the kids, like, honestly, even if you get like a C, like a couple weeks ago, that means that you met like technically the standard. Like a B and A means like you went like above and beyond, almost like to a crazy level to like achieve this thing. And some of them said, well, if I don't get A's, like I get grounded from my parents.
Like, really?
I mean, I had, a parent a couple weeks back where they were, freaking out that their child got a B on a homework assignment and a B on our test.
And they said B's are not acceptable
Not
in our
accepted
house.
in our household. And it's like, well, that pressure's not coming from me there. Technically, I feel like sometimes I'm a little bit easier on these kids than some of the parents are. I think that's what the standards-based grading is trying to be a little bit better about that, not using like A, B, C. But I mean, whatever marker you have, I think that is always going to be something that we can try to continually improve.
I guess what do you expect when the most commonly asked question in class is this gonna be on the test? Is this gonna be on the test? See, if school put learning instead of testing and memorizing as the top standard, then the letter F would not stand for failure. It would stand for find another answer. And if school was really interested in our personal and academic success, students would wake up later, have more freedom and homework, a lot less.
All right, I gotta jump in. I would love if school started later. I'm a hardcore night owl. My preferred sleep schedule would be like, wake up at 9 in the morning, go to bed at 2 in the morning. Like that's my preferred time.
Selfishly, as teachers, that would greatly benefit
Oh my
us.
gosh,
Yes.
I would love if school started later. And there's a lot of studies that back this up about starting later. I feel like there's two key issues when that gets brought up. Number one, a lot of parents drop their kids off at school, or school starts for many students before parents go to work, and it becomes more of a logistical thing if school starts later for some parents. Like, do they have to get into work later? Like, how do they make sure their child makes it on the bus or wakes up? There's that issue, like from parent pushback, and then there's also the issue of some students who are doing a lot of extracurriculars after school. So a lot of extracurriculars go until maybe 4:30, 5:30, especially at the high school level. You push school back an hour later, now you're looking at 6:30.
Think of how late the sporting events that already go late. I get out of, cross country. It's a sport that I help coach. Like on a meet day, I get back at the school at like 6 o'clock already. And, a couple hours later, a few hours later, it's like, I'm ready to go to bed. The homework thing, that's where I think we're a lot less of it will definitely help. You won't have this much of an issue. But you don't leave, you leave even less time for kids and their family to spend time together if you push it later. So I think but I think it's more so the beginning one, like you said. It's just the logistics of getting the kids to school become a whole lot more difficult.
It's a little bit more complex, but like on the record, I would totally love a later start
Yeah.
time, and I don't really give a whole lot of homework.
No.
I mean, I feel like typically my homework assignment's to finish up something
Right.
if you didn't get it done during
Right.
class.
And there are always going to be exceptions to that, but that's generally how it goes. Or they usually get plenty of time or multiple days. I'm like the guy who gives like maybe too much time to get something done that they almost then forget to do it because they like a week to do it, and there's like some time in class to do it. And
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's no perfect way that's going to work for everybody.
That's not my opinion. This conclusion has been scientifically tested and proven. And any teacher that doesn't believe me, feel free to check my works cited page to inspect. Oh, and I did it in MLA format because I know that's all you will accept.
This one's a little salty.
That's a little. There's a lot of directions we can go with this. First of all, social science people, MLA I think is like an ELA thing. I think it's like APA or Chicago style. But anyway, forgetting all the citation thing, I think that we agree with you, Prince EA. We're with you. But that's
but he was a little salty how he said like teachers.
teachers.
You know?
I think I don't know.
And it's not a teacher choice to
No.
start the school day so early.
We have literally. I think people are surprised to hear just how. I mean, we've got some power, but
only within our classroom, not within the system.
Beyond our classroom, we literally do not have a whole lot of power. That's not our choice. That's not even like our principal's choice. We have to follow mandates from the state. And typically, state of Illinois, there's a lot of what they require that they pass. Like for example, it was the state government recently passed that now cursive has to be brought back. Kids have to learn cursive again in elementary school, which personally I think is
dumb.
Stupid.
Spend the time teaching them digital skills because that's our world, right?
But that was passed. So I think to blame teachers solely, I mean, yeah, there's some decisions that teachers make that we totally are at fault with, just like anybody else. But I think that the dig that's solely put upon us, and I'm very sorry if he had some teachers that sucked and didn't care, but I know that I work with and somebody right here, and I hope myself, I think too, that care actually a lot about the kids and the students that we serve and go bend over backward to make sure that they don't fail and that they do their best and that they have second chances. And so to hear a statement like that, I think is probably the most offensive thing for me for the whole video, like the vilifying of the teacher. I feel like that it's one of those things that's just done like so much, like, a regular basis, people like complain about the teacher and blame the teacher.
We've seen bad teachers.
We've seen bad teachers. They're out there.
Mean
We've worked with some bad teachers.
There's as much of a range within the quality of teachers as there is with any job. There's a range in the quality. You might have someone who's really awesome, but also someone who's not very good, or a big mix of different personalities.
But I mean, I think the majority of people who go into education go in with like a big heart and like they care. They make sacrifices. Please don't go just digging like on all the teachers and assume that we're all bad. We're not. So that for me was just probably the hardest part to hear of the whole video.
Let's keep going.
Let's do it.
See, students would get more benefit from an extra hour of sleep than putting them through the torture of an extra essay, reading 150 pages, doing problems 1 through 60 on the worksheet, and having 3 projects due by the end of the week. Not only is it pointless pain, but it's also dim-witted. Because we get so much work, but they don't teach the time management skills to deal with it. See, in school, we are controlled by bells. We have to learn in rooms with the feng shui of a prison cell. We have to ask permission to relieve bodily functions, but not before the teacher asks a million questions like, why didn't you go before class? I'm sorry, my bladder is kind of on its own schedule and it's not always timely. See, teachers always say, use your time wisely. But that never made sense to me. Because these 6 cruel hours of our lives we call school might literally be the worst use of time management ever in history.
These are obviously very complex issues. I think, yes, the general structure of a classroom at its core is not the most visually appealing place, but I think a lot of that also has to do with kind of the budgets of what kind of stuff is available. I know very recently, this is a bit of a tangent, very recently I discovered I'd been following another teacher, 5'1" teacher is her Instagram name, and I just realized she had a YouTube channel. She has a really amazing story, but she actually just recently won a contest to get her an amazing classroom makeover, and it's literally one of the most beautiful classrooms I've ever seen. It actually looks like what you'd want your home to look like too in a classroom, and it's no wonder she loves it. No wonder the kids love it because it's stunning and gorgeous. But guess what? She won a contest to get this expensive makeover. Well, I don't think she won a contest. She was nominated to get this done and to have this makeover, which I'm guessing was several $1,000s to really transform the room. And also, there are some pretty strict laws that require certain like building codes. I know in our district, and I'm not complaining about this, but if we want to bring in any furniture, like we have to get that formally approved and make sure it's up to code. Like even is it like fireproofed, you know, which can get into some health issues in terms of chemicals that are used to fireproof something. So it's a very complex thing. I think that I've seen a lot of really epic rooms with fun stuff on the wall, and I know we've tried within our own like minimalist sense of we've tried to make our rooms feel more inviting. And
I think I agree in terms of the way that it is set up. We don't give the kids enough time to, like, say, use the bathroom, right? You have lunch, maybe you have PE. That's probably your best times. Mm-hmm. But I know for me, like, if a kid tells me, hey, I'm going to use the restroom before class, and they come in a couple minutes late, I'm not going to mark them tardy. They're fine. Like, I had a whole crew of kids last year that did that literally every single day. And, you know, we were fine. I think it's more so just the way that the day is set up, like with the bells being restricted, that even as like the teacher from that standpoint, that does suck a lot sometimes.
Well, and even I think just to bring up the bathroom comment, even for teachers, it kind of stinks. Cause like for myself, I mean, I'm fine. Like, you know, your body gets in a rhythm, but like I teach with 0 break from 8:05 until 12:40. No breaks. I'm all by myself for the vast majority of it in terms of an adult. I don't have the option to leave my room. So it's like, yeah, the kid can't go to the bathroom, but guess who can't go to the bathroom either?
They actually have more flexibility than we do.
Actually, yeah, because the kid can go.
We can't leave. I mean, we've got our plan period, I guess, but
for you, that's at the end of your day.
End of the
day. For me, it's towards the end. So.
I teach 6 classes with just a 22-minute lunch break in between.
And then lastly, I think time management should be taught more. And I think that time management, especially in our digital age we live in, is so important every age. So I think it's something we're still trying to get better at. And also it comes from figuring out like priorities and what matters there. And that's where it goes back to that grades aren't everything. Let's keep going. Did you want to jump in? Or?
No,
okay.
I will proceed.
The traditional teaching method is foolish. No, it's useless, multiplied by the square root of stupid. What they do is they cram information in your head, force feeding you, and then you throw it up on the test. That's not education. That's bulimia. And the more bulimic you are, the better you will do on their assessments. So it's no wonder why so many students graduate mentally and emotionally anorexic.
Was it necessary to tie in an eating disorder with education? I feel like that's not.
Yeah, that was a little. Here's something I do want to bring up, because this is where it kind of goes against this point. I feel like 10 years ago, yeah, this would be a really strong statement being made. But like when the last 10 years, like Common Core, which I know is like, oh, people hate it. That was built to go against, you know, to improve what Prince EA is talking about here, of getting people not just to regurgitate, but to understand. Like when they're math, not just like memorizing 1 + 1 is 2, but understanding why 1 + 1 = 2, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's just...
It's a shift.
It's a shift. And now people are like, they're done with Common Core. They've dropped it in so many states, and they want to go back to the more traditional way of learning because the new way was too hard. So I think that it's just a matter of what do you want. Like, it's not going to be perfect, you know, either way. And like, I mean, honestly, even from when we started just like 4 years ago from this point, education has changed so much already. It changes so much year to year, but it's always trying to improve, trying to make things better. I think that Prince EA, he's got a point, but I think he's a little late jumping on the bandwagon on this one here, so to speak. It
ultimately comes down to everyone has their own school experience.
Right.
And so, like, I feel like my school I'm at right now is a really good school overall, and I think there's a lot of stuff that's very progressive. And I think, like, I really love the emphasis on, like, emotional health. I think that's there. We are a trauma-informed school, which means... we're a trauma-sensitive school, which means that we kind of help acknowledge kind of some of the emotional challenges students face from their own experiences and figure out how we can like better support them and be sensitive to their needs rather than just being so strict on, you know, this memorization of stuff.
We have social workers, we have school psychologists, we have, students that we literally spend our time after school trying to figure out how to help them, how to get like extra food and fundraise, like help our communities out and make sure like we're giving back. We're doing so much more than what a school was originally meant for, which is just to teach kids. Where almost sometimes I feel like we're expecting too much of ourselves, trying to like save them in every single asset of their life, not just the kids, but the families too. And so I think that can't knock, I guess, Prince EA for his own experience, and like very sorry if that's like how he feels, but I mean, there's a lot of schools that are doing a lot more than just educating kids, but also sometimes
just in the memorization
sometimes honestly you've got, for some of these kids, that the teachers are the most stable adults that they have, and they like assume the role of like not specifically like
a caregiver,
a parent or a caregiver, but the role model, the people that they look up to, that
a stable relationship
they can trust, people that they can trust, people that they can talk to. And so I think that just to say that it's the most useless hours of the day, that it's like a prison system. I mean, for some people, like literally school is to get away from their own like personal prison. So I think that
I'm happy you said that.
He raises a point. We have a point. Neither of us are absolutely perfect on it, but I think that conversation needs to be had. That it's somewhere in the middle. That we can find common ground on something like this particular case.
You're so smart. Like
no,
stop. That's so true. Like I feel a little emotional. Like that was really well said. Anyway.
Okay. Well.
Woo!
Teaches you how to memorize dots. True education should teach you how to connect them. True education teaches you how to catch a fish. School teaches you, yeah, you caught the fish, but you didn't show your work, so it doesn't count. Throw it back. I'm just asking, what is school for? It's not education. That's just not true. If you still think that, you might be sniffing glue. See, the word education comes from the Latin root educe, meaning bring out, i.e. bring the gifts out of a person and make them viable.
I love this, bringing the gifts out of the student. One thing I'm a big fan of, at least in my social studies classrooms, are choice projects, and I love trying to incorporate a bunch of different opportunities for students to show different sides of themselves, different skills, and put those out. So we did a recent Civil War choice project with the kids, and I mean, just the type of work I saw some students put together, like they wrote up a script to do like a presentation or like act as if they were a newscaster. Some of them did these amazing sketch notes. We had some different like chart students assembled with some different data points. We had kids do like a historical fiction journal entry. These opportunities bring out different things than if I was just like lecturing the whole time. Like there's so many cool products out there, I think, that can really help bring out what a student has within them. So I feel like this is something we see more and more as like a common trend.
It's something that is being done now, not perfectly, and I think to credit him on one of his points, if we more so made less emphasis on the grading and the test, which by the way most teachers hate. I think he's going to mention this, ACT, SAT. We hate all that stuff. That makes our jobs honestly a lot harder too, because we're judged also. Teachers too. Not so much us, because history doesn't typically get tested. We'd love it if we got rid of all those. Like, it sucks. It is a waste of time. More projects and things I was going to say too, but I think Sarah, you did a good job there. So
well, thanks.
Let's just go on.
It wasn't as deep as what you were saying.
But school doesn't bring out much. It just stuffs more facts inside of you. Now, some of that stuff is justifiable. We need reading, writing, and some arithmetic. That's fair. But are you telling me metamorphic and igneous rocks are more important than self-care? If suicide is the third leading cause of death of ages 10 to 24, and Harvard studies suggest the biggest predictor for success is self-control and emotional health, then why the heck aren't we taught how to handle stress, bullies, or rejection? How about anxiety or depression? Skills we need for our entire lives.
Yes. Emotional health, we need to do more. And I would love, this is just me throwing some stuff out here, I don't anticipate this happening very soon. I would love if we had way more mental health professionals in schools, or even a mental health professional in school that was more accessible. Some districts share like a school psychologist, and there's very little time per kid. Or even like a class, if there could be some sort of
modifying
teacher.
Health class, almost like changing the way that's done, incorporating. And I know that it's already being done in some of those classes. But
because like we're
the
not
point.
certified for that, but even within like my everyday stuff, I got some kids who are really anxious. They'll email me and say like, oh, did I do this right? I feel like I didn't do it right. And I'm like, look, it's wonderful. And if you're concerned about the grade, if something is really terribly off, I'm gonna let you redo it if there's something else that I'm looking for. But like, I hate thinking that anything that I'm doing with my kids in my class is causing them stress and that kind of thing. And that's why I love having an open conversation with them, and why I maybe am too lenient at times on certain things, just because these issues of depression, anxiety, like these are big issues, but they're bigger issues than what individual teachers can do. Like if we think big picture, having more mental health professionals is like an absolutely essential, actionable step. Like schools need to have this. Plus, it also connects, we have to end the mental health stigma. I mean, I think it continues to be broken down a little bit, but accessing mental health services, there's still unfortunately people who don't believe that depression or anxiety are real medical issues, but these things most definitely are. And we look at a child's ACEs or like the chronic stressors that have affected them. It's like we need this more than ever.
I think too, though, I mean, part of the problem we don't have it is just like why there's not a lot of stuff that's not in public education. It costs money.
That's seen as like kind of fluff.
You have to be willing to also, pay these wonderful professionals a salary that's worth the skills that they have. I mean, I know the first school that I worked at, we didn't have any of that whatsoever. We had somebody who was like our dean, who was like our counselor, and like nothing against him, but like,
did he even have like a certification to be a counselor?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe he did. I don't know. But the point is that schools barely make ends meet with, the limited funding. I know schools are running on fumes. And so like, again, it's not just it's so much more complicated than just at the school level. I mean, you're talking like at like the state government level. I always come back to, you value the people who are in these professions, that's going to pass on to the kids feeling more value. If the people who are working in like the classrooms and working, as your social workers, psychologists, and all of that, your instructional aides are happy and feel valued, then your kids are going to receive that in return. But I think that, and it's definitely done to the best of the ability in a lot of schools, but obviously there can be more. It all ties together. It all ties together. And I think too, like with feeling of overwhelm that students have from a teacher perspective, I know I definitely get that too, because we're expected to do so much, like we just mentioned, beyond just teaching kids, in our case, about history or also Spanish, but you're also expected to teach them about just like how to be a good person, and like, know 100, junior high school, know like over 100 kids, 150 kids.
Yeah, you've got 150 kids.
I got 150 kids. To be trying to think about, get to know all of them, be aware of their well-being, and communication with like several parents like every single night, and then just the day-to-day, administrative stuff. Like it's tough for you to like separate like your school from your own life. It's tough. And so I think that, besides just teaching the kids how to deal with their problems, can they teach us too? Like it teaches all of us. I mean, honestly, it's definitely a system, I think, kid, adult, whoever. I'm not just talking about within school, but yeah, I agree with them there. We definitely need to be able to do more with that. Just the problem is that there are some of their barriers that they can be, but they have to be overcome in order to get there.
Bro, I don't even know how to cook. I'm honestly surprised I'm still alive.
That cooking would be a great skill. However, it's a funding thing. I did do extracurricular activity at my past school. I won a $10,000 grant, and I taught nutrition and cooking workshops several days a week, the whole year after school pretty much. And the kids really benefited from that, I think. The kids learned a lot. It's really fun, but financially, that extra food is expensive, and it goes back to, let's just bring in school lunch, why not? It's like a lot of the food that's available at school lunches sometimes is lower quality or not super healthy. Like there's the rules or whatever, but in terms of like, at least the way we live our lives, in terms of what's healthy and what's not, it's not, as ideal as it could be to help kids feel their best and actually be able to learn their best. I would love if we could do more cooking classes, but those resources are limited.
That goes beyond. I mean, school would definitely obviously help with that, but that's a societal thing that you have to go and change.
The kind of different layer of businesses and companies and their role in schools, because even, you know, the different like contracts that schools have with
Coca-Cola.
yeah, you know, that's kind of controversial. So it's like certain companies could maybe have a role in that, but then is it actually like teaching nutritious food, or is it just kind of encouraging you to buy certain brands? It's so complicated.
Yeah, and then it's like for a lot of schools, that from those companies, that's where some funding comes from. And so you cut that off, and if you don't have companies that provide healthy types of food that can afford to like, you know, be in business with schools, and that's something I don't even fully understand just from the teacher level. That's like administrative and
Oh yeah, for sure.
much higher up.
I would love though if there were cooking class in school, but again,
Yeah.
how does that actually get implemented? I don't know.
And if it's even taught. Like,
Because for me, doing it, it was just, cooking's a passion. I got my chef certification, but like I was the one buying ingredients. I was the one who was prepping what we were gonna make, typing up recipes. Granted, I had grant funding for all this, so I wasn't doing this just for free, but there's a lot of costs and time involved. So it's like you almost would need a professional to be, another professional to come in to do it and to be able to do it with everyone.
and then comes back to compensation for that professional though.
And the amount of money needed
Being
for the
there.
food, yeah.
I can name all the battles that happened in the Civil War. Seriously, what?
When I just taught about battles of the Civil War last week. Whoops.
School for? Some say you need it to be successful, and that's something we do not doubt. But do you own a MacBook or iPhone? Did you know they both were created by a dropout? Are you watching this video on Facebook or YouTube? Doesn't matter which you choose, they both were created by dropouts. Ever use Snapchat, WhatsApp, shopped at Whole Foods? Well, thank a dropout. Does your home furniture come from IKEA? Okay, don't get the wrong idea. He was not a dropout. Don't be a fool. I mean, how could he drop out? Ingvar Kamprad, founder of IKEA, never even went to school. I know what you're thinking. He's just picking and choosing. There's millions who didn't go to school that aren't successful. Who is he fooling? And you're right. But open your history books and start perusing. You'll find the very people we idolize in school never really had formal and/or secondary schooling. I'm talking George Washington, Abe Lincoln. America's best presidents had zero school between them. Ben Franklin, Thomas Edison, shall I proceed? Ernest Hemingway, Mark Twain, Teddy Roosevelt, Margaret Mead. Now please, I'm not saying drop out, because some schools are great and many teachers are rare treasures. I'm saying that there's a difference between people who are smart and people who score better. I'm saying that your future is something that no test will ever measure. Even if that test begins in 3 letters like SAT, ACT, it's BS if they say those determine your LIFE. No, your destiny is in your hands. You must shape it to be great. So don't expect school to open doors, because it's more likely to slam them in your face. Sometimes I wonder about all the dreams lost in school and how much potential goes to waste. If it wasn't for music and YouTube, then I would have been just another lost case. Everybody watching this, please, close your eyes. Imagine a child sitting in the back of some teacher's class in some town. He never raises his hand, he fails most of his classes, but inside of him, there is a passion. And if nurtured and brought out, will lead him to discover the cure for cancer. But you see, I'm afraid that that child's gift will never come out. He will never win the Nobel Prize award because in class he was ignored and his worth was judged only by his scores.
The point that I feel like making with, you know, with this one kid who is not, who maybe has this passion for science or chemistry or medical stuff, and doesn't feel like he gets a shot. I mean, just at least from the visuals they show here, you know, you feel for this kid who maybe is left out. And I know that I've got certain students who are very, very quiet, reserved, who don't want to participate, but like I still want to try to get to know them. And like I had a couple students that way last year too, and it's like I write my kids notes sometimes, so I did it once so far this year, and I did it like twice last year. And basically, like on some of these students who are so quiet, I like, you know, I see you, I know that you're here, you matter to me, like you matter in the class. Like that's genuinely how I feel. I don't want them to think that like just because they're not being super chatty or whatever that I don't care about them, because I do. And I appreciate them so much, and I want to be able to see more from them. I want them to feel comfortable, and I want them to get what they want out of education.
Yeah, it's gonna be different for everybody. What exactly
Yeah.
they're what they're looking for. I do think, yeah, there is something to be said though about how we like allocate our time and like how we acknowledge kids. Because I know for me, I felt like super special, like when just one or two teachers I can think of, like, you know, had a conversation with me. And that's something that like I try to do, remembering how that felt like to my own students. I'm sure there are definitely some I've unfortunately probably missed, just because
150 kids.
150 kids going back. I agree. The way that the schedule is set up, it doesn't benefit everybody. Like there's always going to be some of that that's going to be lost, and there's always going to be some of that you regret. And
well, I mean, these are big issues. It's so complex when we look at school and school reform and trying to figure out what the best fit is. So it's like, no wonder it's so hard. I mean, I think there's a lot of good intention with something like this, but I think also nothing is this easy. And I know, at least, we're not done with the video, we're almost done. Even just kind of scrolling through the comments, it looks like a lot of like this I think is targeted towards students, like, and I think it resonates with students, but it's concerning if the issues put as something that's so simple,
if there's no solution really on how to change it.
But yes, I do agree though that he was talking about opportunity, like destiny. It's like you needing to open the doors yourself. I mean, I think there is a layer of that, especially.
Oh yeah, test scores do not, and that's something we've talked about. I mean, shoot, I realized I could have just skated by with C's, get degrees, so to speak, and I would have been same place I'm at right now, honestly. You know, in terms of like, it wasn't all about getting that A, and I wish that wasn't even anything my parents did. Like that was just something that like I thought I had to do.
Well, I'm saying more here, like encouraging students to advocate for themselves.
Yeah, make their own opportunities. Like, but then again, I guess that is something that we have to teach and we have to model and we have to show.
So teachers, principals, parents, advisors, and students,
and government,
ask one more time. What is school for?
So there we go. I think we kind of addressed our final thoughts there on the last.
I think so.
One.
We've blabbered on for
quite some time now.
Quite some time.
As far as, you know, big takeaways, I think there's a lot of good starting points. You know, for this, there have been about 3 million views, at least from the YouTube one. I'm sure he got a lot of views on the Facebook part of it too. You know, there's a lot of great points here. It's by no means the end of a conversation. These are major institutional changes that I think could be really positive, but if we are to actually take some of these things seriously, it's going to require a lot of time, a lot of money, additional money and funding. It's going to require some shifts in the way how our society operates. So yeah, I think a lot of the ideas mentioned here are great, but under the current framework, it's very rarely possible. Someone has to pay for incorporating these, whether that's a teacher paying with their time, spending a lot of extra time to make this work, whether it's a district paying with, you know, kind of the effort or potential parent backlash of adjusting things, you know, like
communities paying more, like
in taxes to
dollars.
Support the funding if the state can't help pay it, you know. That's the truth on these situations, at least, again, from our own experience. But nonetheless, we really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and you know, we think that a lot of interesting discussion can come from something like this original piece. If you've got any questions or comments below, we'd love to hear those. If you are new to Mr. and Mrs. Social Studies, we'd love to have you here as a subscriber. You can actually subscribe right up there, and you can check out some of our past videos over here. We'll see you guys next time.
Take care, guys.